I really do think that Donald Trump has genuinely changed his mind about President Putin after giving him so much latitude for so many months and so many opportunities to wriggle out of a ceasefire. His patience has finally snapped.
Kamala Harris has said she won't run for California governor. That means foregoing a shot at her home state's highest post to keep open the possibility of another White House bid in 2028. In a statement, she said, "For now, my leadership and public service will not be in elected office. I look forward to getting back out and listening to the American people, helping elect Democrats across the nation who'll fight fearlessly and sharing more details in the months ahead about my own plans." So, David, let's just check that I've interpreted that correctly. She won't have her time taken up by the quest and then, possibly becoming California governor. This keeps her options open, right?
Absolutely. This is a little bit of a surprise in some ways. I think we knew that she was going to announce her decision this summer. She said that. We know that her private polling has been testing out how she would fare both in the governor race and also in a potential presidential race in 2028. And the way that it's being widely interpreted here is that her decision not to run for California governor in next year's election does mean that she is planning to run for president again for the Democratic Party. That's really the only interpretation that's being put on it at the moment, unless she's going to come out and unveil an unknown super duper job. It was thought that having been vice president and having run the kind of election that took place last year, where she was given just something like 130 days to get her campaign together and felt that she wasn't given enough of a chance, that really there were only two jobs that were possible for her left in politics, because she's been a senator for California, she's been Attorney General of California, and so the only two jobs left were governor of the biggest state in America or another go at president.
So just elaborate a little bit on that for me, because I think most people will hear that and think, my goodness me, why doesn't she just leave well alone? It was an embarrassing defeat. Donald Trump was absolutely almightily victorious, swallowing up a huge amount of the vote. But she would still insist, certainly if we look at the perspective of the fact that she might run again in 2028, she would still insist that she didn't have enough time, she didn't build up enough groundwork, and that she feels she's still got a very big chance of becoming the next president of the United States, given all the appropriate build-up. Yeah,
it's partly, I suppose, the chance to emerge in her own campaign, because she was part of the Biden campaign, and she felt that she was damaged politically by doing the right thing and standing rock solid behind Biden, not breaking with him. Remember, she didn't come out and say, well, it's clear that the president's passed it, and so obviously I'm the person for the job. She didn't rubbish Biden. She didn't even come out with any new policies. She was very famously asked on a daytime TV show here what she would have done differently if she had her time again as vice president, and she said she couldn't think of anything. That was widely seen as a very weak answer that really damaged her campaign. It all just seemed to emphasize the point that she actually wasn't that well prepared for the campaign, and may feel personally that now she's been through it once, she actually knows where she went wrong and how to run a more professional campaign. I have to say, moreover, whenever you look at polling of the Democrats, Democrat Party members, that is, or voters, she's by far the person most mentioned as the 2028 candidate that they favour. I should say that there's a long list of people, obviously, who want to or who could be the nominee, and she's probably the best known because of being vice president and going through that campaign. So that would perhaps skew the polling, but it's pretty clear in all the pollings that she is at the moment the front runner even as it's early days. And there is also a feeling that the party has just not done enough or even anything to bring on the next generation of potential presidential candidates or national leaders. It's that there's a real deficit still at the top of the party, which is led effectively by Chuck Schumer, who's this very long-serving New York senator who leads them in the Senate, who's probably the most prominent Democrat at the moment, and he's felt by quite a lot of Democrats to be really out of touch and not a leader who's inspiring people to come back to the party.
Yeah, I mean, look, a couple of perspectives. The Republicans will have a field day with this. They'll say that she was complicit in hiding the sort of true state of health of President Biden. And the other perspective, I suppose, is that the Democrats are really struggling to raise the platform of any other senior Democrat. There are perhaps a few more left-wing ones that have got name recognition, but they're struggling, the Democrats, aren't they, for any sort of, whether they're young rising stars or people who sort of might be part of a legacy. They can't get beyond their election defeat. It doesn't seem just yet, David. And so I wonder whether that plays into this too, that she's so high up on those favourability ratings within the Democrats, because Democrat voters simply don't recognise or don't know many of the other names well enough to go for them. Let's talk about US growth. So the Federal Reserve, America's central bank, has defied a call from Donald Trump to keep interest rates on hold at 4.5% they've defied a call from President Trump and they've kept interest rates on hold at 4.5% for the fifth time in a row. Trump had called for a cut in rates after the American economy grew faster than expected. Head of the Fed, Jerome Powell, has been at loggerheads with the president for some time now, even calling him a numbskull for not slashing rates. The Fed will feel that they've got every reason, though, to keep them on hold. Does the data back this up, despite what Trump says, David?
Well, the data that they're looking at is, in fact, really they're thinking about the unknown from the impact of his tariffs, because he hasn't finalized. The sequencing has been bad for Trump, we put it that way, because his deadline for setting out everybody's tariffs is Friday. Now, I've got a feeling that if he had revealed all of his final tariffs maybe a week or two ago, that would have given the Fed a much better a way of assessing just how the economy is going, because there are a number of strengths in it. There's lots of consumer confidence. Some of the biggest companies are, especially in the AI field and technology, are roaring ahead and making massive profits. And unemployment is pretty low and doesn't seem to be moving too much, although there were some layoffs in anticipation of the tariffs. And if it wasn't for this tariff issue, I'm sure that the Fed would have been cutting rates a lot more already and would be likely to again. So what they're basically doing is hedging. And the reason that I think there's a strong indication that there might be a rate cut next month is that will have given time for markets to settle and with the final tariffs that are coming out soon. So I think it's bad timing, but that it's set in the diary. This is the date of the meeting, and Trump, for his own reasons, had set his own deadline. I don't know if he was thinking about the sequencing or whether how they arrived at their own deadline. But as you're saying, he's been unhappy that the rates aren't much lower, and he's explained that every quarter point off the Fed interest rate means that the national cost of borrowing is reduced by $350 billion just by taking a quarter point off interest rates. So understandably, in terms of the national debt, he's very angry about it.
Let's just touch on tariffs, and then I just want to talk about the the definitive date on the deadline for a Russia-Ukraine ceasefire. But just as a sidebar, because you've been mentioning, of course, the tariff deadline of Friday, Donald Trump's imposed a 25% tariff on India today as a penalty for trading with Russia. We heard that he might do this as part of sort of sanctions aimed at Russia. This seems to be the beginning of it, David.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, how I really do think that Donald Trump has genuinely changed his mind about President Putin after giving him so much latitude for so many months and so many opportunities to wriggle out of a ceasefire. His patience has finally snapped. And so they warned that they would do secondary sanctions. And the clue was, whenever Trump talked about secondary sanctions, he referred to them as secondary tariffs. And now we know why, because he's put an extra charge on India, which buys Russian oil and oil products. And so this is the start of secondary tariffs. And will he go there with China? Will he go there with Turkey, with whom he's cultivated very good relations with? President Erdogan of Turkey has been absolutely key to helping out in the Middle East. So you've got some big decisions to come over the next week or so on these tariffs. And as we know, Trump in Scotland, he shortened the deadline for Putin to show any sign of a truce to effectively, I think, August the 8th. He had kicked it off, hadn't he, for 50 days back into September, but now he's brought it back to August the 8th. So it's all going to happen in the next couple of weeks, which is a refrain we hear quite often from Trump. Oh, we'll see in 2 weeks. But
is he going to stick to it?
This time it does seem to be happening. I really do think that we've seen very clear signs that he's prepared to get tough on Russia.
Yeah, and we should say, I should correct myself a little bit and say that India's tariff levy of 25% plus a penalty for buying their military equipment from Russia, being Russia's largest buyer of energy along with China, says Trump. So there's an extra penalty on top of that 25%. All eyes on Friday and that tariff deadline, of course. That's 1st of August set by Washington for countries around the world to reach agreements on trade. David Charter, as ever, excellent analysis. Thank you for rounding everything up for us so well. David Charter is the assistant US editor for The Times.